Have you ever noticed that the life you live today isn't a matter of chance, but rather the result of precise laws, as exact as mathematics? What if I told you that the way you think about money, the choices you make at 40 years old or beyond, could mathematically determine whether you will prosper or remain trapped in debt and limitations? It sounds absurd, doesn't it? But it is precisely this apparent contradiction that proves there is a science to becoming wealthy. And if you learn to use it, your future can change right now. There's an invisible game playing out all around you right now, and it has rules. Most people believe wealth is about luck, inheritance, or timing. I discovered at 26 years of age that it isn't. There's a science behind getting rich, laws as exact as those of physics, and those who learn to obey them gain an advantage. I call it the science of getting rich because it's neither vague faith nor magical optimism. These are systematic principles that, when applied with intention and repetition, produce predictable results. When I say there's a science, I'm not talking about empty promises. I'm talking about frequency, vibration, cause and effect. Everything vibrates: your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions. You don't attract things merely by wanting them. You attract them by the frequency you maintain. It's exactly like tuning a radio. Turn the dial to a station and you'll only pick up what's on that frequency. In the same way, if you operate on the frequency of scarcity, your experience will be scarcity. If you operate on the frequency of abundance, not through magical thinking, but through habits, clear convictions, and deliberate actions, reality begins to respond. I know this sounds abstract, so I'll be practical and very specific. I was broke, going from one excuse to another, and at one point my annual income was just $4,000. In less than 1 year, by applying simple and consistent principles, studying what worked, changing my way of thinking, adopting new habits of action, I started earning $175,000 per year. It wasn't luck. It was a shift in strategy and frequency. When I changed what I gave to the world, more service, more intention, better delivery, what I received changed in direct proportion. If you want to apply this today, here's a practical protocol, scientifically aligned with the logic of the laws I teach, step by step and measurable. Quick diagnosis, 48 hours. For 3 days, write down everything you think when the subject is money. Fear, guilt, desires, excuses. Don't judge, just record. This reveals your dominant frequency, the frequency you are transmitting. Clear and measurable goal. Write on a physical card exactly how much you want to earn, by when, and from what sources. Include a date and an emotional reason, why it matters to you. The act of writing crystallizes intention. It's not superstition, it's a tool for focus. Daily routine of vibration and action, 30 days. A morning, 5 minutes of vivid visualization of the result, 2 minutes of emotional affirmation. Feel it first, then say it. I recommend the phrase I use: I am so happy and grateful now that money comes to me in increasing quantities from multiple sources on a continuous basis. Repeat with feeling.b. Afternoon. 30 to 60 minutes of practical study. Read case studies, learn value delivery techniques, role-play, sales, service. Studying like a scientist means noting hypotheses, testing, measuring, adjusting. C. Daily action. Execute at least one action that directly increases the value you deliver. Call a potential client, improve a process, offer a small free solution that generates testimonials. The law of cause and effect requires you to put energy into the world. The return will be proportional. Weekly metrics and feedback. Every week, record actions taken, leads generated, gross revenue, feedback received. If the numbers aren't going up, it's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of consistency in following the laws. Adjust one variable at a time, scientific measurement. Bet on yourself strategy, my personal practice. If you're employed and want to start a business, work on a side activity until the extra income equals your main income, then make the transition. Don't skip this step. It reduces emotional and financial risk. I myself started with a cleaning service, very low prestige, high execution demand, and scaled up until I could safely leave my job. Now, I'll address the objections that arise in people's minds. But what if this is just positive thinking with no real impact? That's the mistake. Thinking without action and without method is fantasy. The laws I describe demand both internal change and external practice. Another objection: what if I don't have talent or luck? Talent helps, but it's not a prerequisite. Brilliant people sometimes remain poor because they don't do things in a certain way. Learning to process your decisions, align your self-image, and consistently deliver value produces superior results. To provide evidence of how adjusting resources and behavior affects real and measurable well-being, economic and psychological research shows that income influences life evaluation, and that part of the benefit of money is reducing suffering and expanding options. Up to a certain point, the well-known plateau that studies have identified is close to an average income where emotional satisfaction stagnates. This confirms what I say in practice. Money matters because it improves choices and alleviates pain, but it doesn't solve internal paradigms, which is why transformation needs to be twofold: mindset and action. Furthermore, how you use money affects your well-being. Replicated studies have shown that spending part of one's income helping others, pro-social spending, increases life satisfaction, which echoes my emphasis on giving more and serving better to receive more. I want to give you a specific and powerful exercise with a deadline and measurement, the 30-day Science of Getting Rich Challenge. Do exactly this for 30 consecutive days. Day 0. Write your financial goal and the emotional reason. Date and amount. Days 1 through 30. Daily. 5 minutes of visualization, plus affirmation. 30 minutes of practical study on how to generate value in your context. 1 concrete action to generate value. Sale, contact, offer, improvement. Record the result in a journal. Weekly. Review metrics. Adjust 1 tactic. At the end of 30 days, sum up the impact. New leads, clients, incremental revenue. If nothing changed financially, what will have changed is your level of clarity and habit, and that is already measurable progress. This discipline is the technique that pulled me out of scarcity. Now, for the human part. When I started, I felt fear, humiliation, shame, emotions that paralyze. I remember washing floors for $15 a service, feeling that it was low level, and at the same time realizing it was an entry point. The mix of shame and hope hurt me, and that pain forced me to study, experiment, err, and adjust. Today, when I tell this story, the reaction I seek to provoke is a mixture of surprise and possibility. Surprise because the turnaround happened so quickly once I aligned my thoughts and actions. Possibility because anyone can replicate these steps with courage and repetition. Count your small victories. Every new account, every satisfied client is tangible evidence that the law is operating. Finally, a practical reminder to maintain execution. Transform study and practices into a non-negotiable ritual. Write down 3 micro goals per day, 1 mental, 1 for study, and 1 for action. At the end of the week, honor yourself for each micro goal accomplished. This accumulation of small victories alters your self-image, and changing your self-image is the epicenter of the science I teach. You don't get rich trying to prove to the world that you can. You get rich because you start to believe, act, and give in a different way. If you do this with method, repetition, and responsibility, there is no mystery, there is a result. Everything in the universe vibrates, absolutely everything. Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, the money circulating in the world. Nothing stands still. This isn't cheap philosophy, it's science. Physics shows us that matter is energy in constant motion, and this energy vibrates at specific frequencies. That's why you can only attract what is in harmony with the frequency you maintain. Just as a radio tuned to a certain station only transmits that signal, your mind works the same way. If you are vibrating in scarcity, worried about debts, anxious about the future, that is exactly more of what you will continue to attract. I clearly remember the time when I was drowning in debt. There was always a lack of money, and the feeling was like living in a bottomless pit. It was then, after I started studying this knowledge, that I understood that what maintained that pattern was the vibration I was carrying. The constant fear, the doubt about whether I would succeed, the feeling of failure. All of it put me on a frequency that could only return more of the same. When I decided to change, not just by thinking positively, but by consciously choosing new habits, new images in my mind, and new actions, in a matter of months, my financial life took a leap that seemed impossible. I went from owing money to having savings. This didn't happen by luck, it happened because I altered the vibration I was operating on. Many people ask me, but what if I think positively and nothing happens? That's the mistake. The universe doesn't respond to what you merely desire intellectually. It responds to what you feel deep down, to what you sustain with emotion. If you wake up and say, "It will work out," but spend the entire day feeding fear, worry, and doubt, the real frequency you're transmitting is scarcity, and that is what will come back to you. It's like someone wanting to listen to jazz music, but keeping the radio tuned to a news station. However much someone longs to hear jazz, if they're tuned to the news channel, that's all they'll get. This process is so precise, you can observe it in your own life right now. Ask yourself, what has been a recurring theme? Financial struggles, troubled relationships, anxiety about the future. All of these are reflections of the frequency you've been maintaining. But the good news is, you possess the power to change this. Your mind acts as a control panel, activating different brain cells, each capable of setting your body to a new vibration. This is precisely what alters what you attract into your life. The choice is entirely yours. I want to propose a simple exercise for you to experience this shift firsthand. For 7 days, begin each morning by consciously choosing what you want to feel. Not just what to think, but what to feel. Upon waking, close your eyes and vividly imagine in every detail what it feels like to live in the abundance you desire. Picture the tranquility of paying your bills effortlessly, of seeing money left over, of having the freedom to choose. Bring that emotion into your body until you can feel the physical difference. Then, throughout the day, whenever you notice yourself slipping into worry or doubt, take a deep breath and return to that imagined scene. You will be training your mind to sustain a new vibration. Research in positive psychology shows that sustained emotions not only alter subjective well-being, but also enhance cognitive capacity and decision-making. Individuals who consistently maintain positive emotions exhibit greater mental clarity, more creativity, and an enhanced ability to spot opportunities. This confirms what I teach. Changing your frequency isn't just about feeling better. It's literally about opening doors you previously didn't even notice. And look, this isn't some distant theory. Globally renowned individuals have applied this principle, even if they didn't know how to name it as such. Oprah Winfrey, for instance, has stated in numerous interviews that her life transformed when she began to focus daily on gratitude and abundance, even while still living in poverty. She consciously altered the vibration she was holding, and reality began to respond in alignment. Today, she stands as one of the greatest living examples of how internal alignment can generate external prosperity. Now consider, how many times have you personally been in such an elevated emotional state that things seem to flow effortlessly? Perhaps during a period when you were deeply in love, brimming with energy, or inspired by a project you wholeheartedly believed in. In those moments, you were operating on a different frequency, and opportunities appeared, people responded differently, life seemed to open up pathways. That wasn't mere chance. It was your vibration attracting what was in harmony with it. The reality is, you have control over the station you choose to tune into. If you desire wealth, vibrating worry won't get you there. If you want healthy relationships, vibrating resentment is counterproductive. If you seek health, vibrating guilt won't bring it. Frequency precedes form. When you alter what you transmit, you inevitably change what you receive. This is the law, and it never fails. The law of cause and effect is simple and unyielding. What you put out into the world returns to you with the same intensity and in the same proportional form. It's not moralizing. It's the physics of the universe. If you pour worry, complaint, and "I can't" into the world, don't expect to receive financial freedom, opportunities, or respect. If you pour out genuine service, careful attention, and tangible value, the return will, by law, be proportional. Ask yourself now, what have you been giving daily that could explain the results you're currently experiencing? Do you expect warmth without adding logs to the fire? Does that happen? No. The fireplace only warms up after you feed the flames. I experienced this firsthand. There was a time when I could barely afford gasoline. My annual earnings were ridiculously low. That was the stark reality. Then I began to understand that I needed to change what I was contributing to the world. Instead of making excuses, I implemented a new way of operating, offering better, more consistent service with genuine intention and building a reputation. In a short time, my income jumped from something like $4,000 a year to $175,000 a year. It wasn't luck, it was the direct equivalence between what I started giving and what I began receiving. The math works out perfectly when you perform the correct operations. If you want the law to work in your favor, do this now. Create a cause and effect journal, a simple ledger. Paper often works better for the mind. Columns: action given, cost, time, money, energy, value perceived by other, immediate result, lead, thank you, initial return, result in 30 days, new client, recommendation, sale. For 30 days, record all actions that involve giving value. Don't invent. Call a client, deliver something extra without charge, send content that solves a problem, correct a process within your team, offer a brief and useful consultation. At the end of the week, total the results. The metric you want to observe is simple: return per unit of contribution. If you gave X and received Y, there's a proportion. Study it and repeat what works. Many fear giving too much. They think they'll be exploited, that they'll lose resources. This is a scarcity mindset. There are sensible ways to give. Start by incrementally scaling your offering, measuring the return. If you give 1 hour of free consultation per week, and that brings in one paying client every 4 weeks, the return is clear. If it doesn't, adjust your offering until you find the point where the return appears. Test like a scientist. Hypothesis, experiment, measure, adjust. Here's a practical and measurable exercise: the 14-day equivalence challenge. For 14 days, commit to performing 3 acts of value per day that you wouldn't normally do. a prospecting contact that genuinely helps the person, a practical adjustment to a process that improves a client's experience, or sending problem-solving content to a segment of your list. Record time spent and results. At the end of 14 days, calculate how many contacts turned into conversations, how many conversations turned into opportunities, how many opportunities turned into revenue. This simple funnel is the operational translation of the law of cause and effect: applied energy, form of value, measurable return. It's also crucial to cultivate the mindset that underpins the action. Ask yourself, do you deliver out of obligation or a genuine desire to serve? People who only deliver the bare minimum rarely receive beyond the minimum. Delivery needs to be done with intention and feeling, not to manipulate, but because your attitude sends out a vibration that attracts aligned people and resources. When I shifted the intention behind my work from getting the most to serving better, the quality of the returns changed. This generates a powerful emotion. First, humility for doing more than what's required, then surprise and joy upon witnessing the reciprocity. Let's look at a public example that helps illustrate this. Many who achieved great success operated on the premise of delivering value before expecting a return. Individuals who disseminated powerful ideas, those who deliver real transformation, end up building legacies and lasting financial returns. Conversely, there are countless cases of individuals who quickly gained fortunes and then lost them due to not sustaining habits of contribution, making impulsive choices, and lacking the discipline to consistently exchange value with the market. Learning to read this pattern can save your financial life before it's too late. Now, a practical execution detail for daily life. Establish a rule of 1% additional contribution per day on top of what you already do. If you normally solve 2 problems per client, aim to solve 1% more each day. It could be a small process improvement, an extra personalized email, or a bonus resource. By the end of the month, these accumulated 1% increments will add up to a noticeable difference and, by law, will bring compounding returns. This incremental acceleration works because the law of cause and effect operates on a larger scale. Small, consistent actions generate compound results. Allow me to speak about the emotional reaction this provokes. At first comes resistance, shame, doubt, fear of being exploited. Next, a hopeful nervousness emerges because beginning to measure transforms effort into data. Then, with the first evidence of return, comes relief, and then confidence. This emotional progression is important. Don't shy away from the initial shame. Acknowledge it, record the action, repeat. Emotional transformation walks hand in hand with financial transformation. Finally, remember this practical and non-negotiable rule. Do not expect immediate return to validate the action. The law works with time and form. You might not see the return instantaneously, but consistency builds a track record that the market perceives. Reputation is a form of capital. If you want a final challenge, here it is. For 90 days, maintain your cause and effect journal, and on the 91st day, review the 90 days, looking for patterns. What repeats? What generated more return with less cost? And what needs to be eliminated? Adjust your action map according to this data. Completing this cycle of hypothesis, action, measurement, adjustment is the most efficient way to transform intention into wealth. Because, at its core, the law of cause and effect is operating right now, at this very moment, on everything you give and everything you receive. Perception. The word seems simple, but it is the entire game. The same situation can be an absolute disaster for one person or the exact impetus that launches another into a new life. Everything depends on how the mind interprets the fact, and that interpretation determines the emotion, the reaction, and the subsequent action. Have you ever stopped to consider that many of your greatest limitations don't originate from the world itself, but from the story you tell yourself about the world? When something bad happens, a layoff, an unexpected bill, a betrayal, a failure, there's the objective fact, the event itself, and there's the story you construct around it. That story turns into a film in your head, and this film regulates your biology, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny. I know this from personal experience. When I was young, a bandsaw injured my thumb, and suddenly my plans changed. I dropped out of school, taken on what I called dead-end jobs, and that injury seemed to close the few doors I imagined having. In that moment, I felt shame, fear, and a kind of despondency that seemed absolute. But the objective truth was singular. An accident that caused an immediate dream to evaporate, and the story I chose to tell from that fact could either bury me or propel me forward. I chose to study. My perception shifted, and that very experience which could have been an end became the impetus that launched me into studying life-changing books. The emotions I felt at the time were pain and fear. Later came surprise, wonder, and gratitude for having been forced to seek another path. This narrative shift was the difference between stagnating and transforming. How do you change this narrative? First, stop confusing fact with meaning. Always ask yourself, what is the fact? And what is the story I am adding to that fact? This separation is practical, measurable, and can be trained. When you lose a client, the fact is, the client cancelled. The story might be, I am incompetent, I'm going to go bankrupt, no one will hire me. Or the story could be, the client had a need I didn't meet. What can I learn from this to improve my proposal? Two frameworks, two different energies, two possible futures. Science confirms that the way you frame a decision profoundly alters its outcome. Decades of research in decision-making show that people react differently to risk depending on how the choice is presented. Framing in terms of gains versus losses changes the propensity to act. This isn't mystical theory, it's documented human behavior. When you shift the framing, you change your risk assessment and, consequently, the actions you take. Furthermore, when perception is one of scarcity, I don't have enough, the mind enters a tunnel vision mode that reduces cognitive capacity and makes decisions short-sighted and reactive. A poverty of perception consumes mental bandwidth and hinders planning, leading to errors that perpetuate scarcity. Conversely, when you broaden your perception, seeing options and resources, your field of vision expands and the quality of your decisions improves. This is precisely what researchers Mullainathan and Shafir demonstrated when discussing scarcity mentality and its cognitive cost. I propose an immediate and concrete challenge for you. For 7 days, whenever something bad happens, pause. Write down the objective fact on one line, write your automatic story on another, and then write 3 possible reinterpretations. Choose one of these and take at least one related action within the next 24 hours. At the end of the 7 days, tally how many actions you took and how many distinct results emerged. You will be surprised, because life doesn't change merely by thinking differently. It changes when you articulate new meaning and act accordingly. This shift in perception also summons an emotion we need to recognize. Initially, you will feel resistance, perhaps anger at having to look at this. In the second phase, curiosity will emerge. You begin to test alternative narratives. Then comes a contained relief when the first actions yield results. Each stage evokes a different feeling: shock, then resistance, then curiosity, then confidence. I experienced these phases myself. The memory of my thumb injury hurt me, shamed me, but this very event pushed me to study, to change my outlook on life, and ultimately to forge a path I would never have foreseen had I remained trapped by the initial story. Remember, events are amoral. We imbue them with meaning. Perception is the lens that shapes your world, and if you learn to polish that lens, you will see possibilities where others only see walls. Changing the lens isn't about deceiving yourself, it's about consciously choosing the narrative that amplifies solutions and actions. Do the exercise, measure the results, repeat. The practice of rewriting the meaning of facts is one of the quickest and most practical levers you can apply today to transform your fears into momentum and your future into something intentional. If there's one point you need to retain from everything that has been said, it is this. It's not the fact itself that defines your life, but how you perceive it. The same event can be the anchor that holds you back or the impetus that propels you forward. When you learn to consciously choose the perception that empowers you, you take control of your energy, your decisions, and inevitably, your results. And now, to continue this journey, the next video is already appearing on your screen. There you will climb another step in your wisdom's evolution and become at least 1% better than you are now. I appreciate your presence and look forward to seeing you in the next video.